11, my slides work? Tonight at 11, we have late-breaking news, just crazy news about dangers lurking in your neighborhood. You ever heard that line? Tonight at 11, local authorities won't tell you. What they won't tell you about dangers lurking in your basement. Oh, this just in. Also in your attic. And you're like, whoa, oh my goodness, I never thought to be so scared. Like, yes, you must be scared. And what you don't know about the West Nile virus is it has polluted your local rivers and not, or something like that. And you're like, wow, local, this is really getting tight. This is getting really close. And what you need to make it through the next disaster, you probably won't live, but a local inventor has created a device for your pets to survive the next big earthquake or something like that. And you're like, oh man, this is pretty crazy, pretty wild. And there's all sorts of really just normal bad news. I mean, we had bad news yesterday, right? There's bad news coming, but fear, this fear response that we have just drives us to desire, how can I be safer? How can I secure myself? How can I get into a place where this doesn't hurt me? And so we're living these lives of trying to kind of shrinking, and maybe if we just had a gated community, then we wouldn't have all these normal problems. And just, it's crazy, crazy, crazy. Tonight at 11, that giant asteroid that's about to obliterate the planet, how will it affect the midterm elections? Right? Yeah, that's just jokes, right? Jokes. But the goal is so much we want to stay safe. How do I stay safe? Safety seems really normal. Safety is a primary human concern. In fact, when we were doing training with the kids leaders, we were talking about how if they don't feel safe, they're not going to learn. Because if they feel like they have to respond to something going on in the room, or everything's crazy, or everything's noisy, then they're not able to relax and learn even. Right? So safety is super important. Don't get me wrong, but inertia is also a huge human problem. That's the tendency for objects that are stationary to desire to stay stationary. And I know that's a physical property, but how many of you experience that? It's like, hey, Jesus says, go and make disciples. And you're like, yeah, is there a stay option? Well, I guess we could work with the text and try to see how the main verb there is to make disciples. So maybe you don't really have to go. Well, let's work our way around this problem. Right? Let's work our way around anything Jesus says to do. Let's just stay safe and stay put, stay still is this really common thing. And I'm sitting there thinking about this yesterday in my hammock, all right? So I'm not like, oh, and then, when I saved that nation, and I'm thinking about these things in my very privileged life where I'm relaxing with a nice cool breeze and not really a whole lot of cares, except for maybe what's in my crawl space, and that sort of thing. But Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. He says, leave your boats, leave your nets, and that can contextualize that. That was, hey, you disciples, hey, you fishermen, I want you to stop what you're doing and come and learn from me. So that would be the leaving the boats and leaving the nets. It's not a common thing that you need to do necessarily. But take up your cross, meaning, well, that doesn't sound very safe, first of all. But it's actually the safest thing you can do is to say, you know what? My life is now in Jesus' hands. My life is forfeit, I guess, because it's all about what he wants, and now I'm going to follow him. Baptism is that symbol, right, where we say, I am dead to myself. This is our baptismal. Man, we need to get this thing filled up with water and baptizing some more people, don't we? Don't we need to see Jesus just take over some lives so that they can start to say, you know what, I remember I had my own way of doing things, but then I was buried with Christ in baptism and raised to a new life. My life was over, and now my new life has begun. I mean, that's the goal. That's what we want. That's what we're asking God to do here, is to help people do that. But that's a hard message to hear. Give up your life when everything's about staying safe. You know the rub, right? Because Jesus talks to you all the time about this. Hey, you know what you should be doing? Yeah, but you know what inertia feels like. It's so great. And just, pass me a donut and let's just stay still and stay safe. But no, he wants us to move into that life. I remember when I was a part of burying my grandmother. I got to to preach at the memorial service with Maasai warriors in the back that showed up to honor my grandma. Same when my grandfather died as well. But as I was looking at her life and the way that she lived and the way that she just gave up herself, by the way, they're my heroes, so it's hard to talk about them, but I will. I just noted that she has lived that pre-baptized lifestyle. Her life wasn't hers anymore. She just gave it up. So death was no sting, really. It was just like, oh, now I go accomplish what I've always hoped for, is to be in God's presence, to be with Him. Death wasn't this major obstacle that they fought against. It was welcome to bring them into God's presence. Because I had already died to myself and given up my treasures and sold my assets and went to serve the King and to see people, groups of all types, find hope in King Jesus. Those kind of stories remind you that maybe staying safe isn't the best thing. Maybe I can't really hold on to what I think I can hold on to behind my gated community. Maybe I just need to say, this is all yours anyway. Maybe you just do what you want to do with my life. This is a huge struggle for us, for Americans, for those that have a lot to give up. The rich young rulers of the Bible, the one rich young ruler approached Jesus and says, so I'm a pretty good person. Anything else I need to do to enter the kingdom? And he said, for you, I make you a very nice price. Give up everything you've got, sell it, give it to the poor, and come follow me. That's the kind of situation we end up with here. We are maybe not as young, but we're the rulers. And so God's message comes cross-purpose to us. Well, what about His kingdom is better than the one I'm creating? We ask. Because I've kind of got it. I've kind of got things settled. I kind of like things a certain way. Don't mess with them, Jesus. And I'm sorry, you don't like to hear this. I don't like to hear it either. Sometimes somebody's got to say it. But in a sense, we're all refugees, and if we could get that in our mindset, we're all refugees. We've run to the Lord for provision and protection. We're all refugees, and we're going to look at a psalm today as we try to get our heart aligned and in rhythm with who God is. We're going to look at this idea of refuge, and refuge is one of the central metaphors in the Psalms. How many of you have read many of the Psalms? You've been through them, you've kind of read them, and it just keeps coming up. He's a strong tower, he's a refuge, he's a place of defense, he's a fortress, right? I could go on. It's just this constant theme, which means that those who run into him to be safe are refugees. They're going to seek refuge. And that's where we find ourselves today, is as privileged as we might be, we know at some level, and certainly those that are baptized know at some level that they have got to give up what they've got in order to obtain what God has. I need what He has. But I want to convince you today that refuge isn't a place, it's a person. And maybe you knew this. And I saw this all throughout the VBS songs too. Jesus is our safe place, all right? So I get it. This may not be brand new to you, but how we're going to process this, I think, is going to be new, and it's going to be challenging to us. I think it would be helpful if we all read it together. I don't know if you can read that off the screen. If you can, would you read with me? God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage. The kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah. This little poetic pause. Now, I know that I'm a preacher, but sometimes I just want to teach you something too. Can I just teach you something real quick? If you take you said yes, basically. If we look at Psalm 46, there's structure to it, and sometimes you don't really see it. You certainly don't see it in a Bible like I've got, where the lines and the cola and the strophes, these are all fun poetry words, but where they all are so compact. You need to see it in a full line version to see the poetry of it. Did you know that? That's why it's so small up there, so that you can kind of see, oh, that's one of the lines, and that's one of the lines, and that's a new point. So that's just something that you need to read it as poetry, because the psalm is a song. Another thing that's really cool is the symmetry in some of these poems. There's fancier words for it, but let's just go with symmetry. So this is, you don't have to read this, but it's all shaped toward the center. It's all shaped toward the center. The center two lines are the nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice and the earth melts. That's what it's centered on. And then everything going out from there is a parallel thought, all the way to the top. So it's shaped like that. And there are whole books of the Bible that are shaped like this. It's one of those little things that design structures that are in there, which makes you think, oh, maybe they weren't just like, hey, we should scribble something on some clay tablets and represent. I mean, these guys were thinkers, and these guys were developers, and they worked hard at their craft. So I'll zoom in just a little bit more. Again, a little bit harder to see, but God is a refuge. So we should have no fear, because God rules over nature, and God is present. Though the nations rage, God is present. He speaks and God is present. He rules not just over nature now, but political calamities. And our response is to be still, and that God is a refuge. So that, just so you know, that kind of stuff is going on in here. So if you read over it super fast, and then you're like, that's it? No, that's not it. You can do it again. You could read it again, and you could say, oh, which words match? And oh, that line sounds a lot like that line. I wonder what they were trying to... So there's more there, just so you know. Okay, we're done. No, we're not done, but I just needed to teach you something. I felt that feels good. So this is a community psalm. This is a community song. He's our refuge, and we will not fear, right? This is not just an individual one, which if you look at the chapter before, you see kind of a, hey, my help, my this. But this is our help. And so together, this is something that we can incorporate. So did you notice all that language about the earth? The earth gives way. That sounds like the big earthquake, right? But it's not just natural disaster, because it's paralleled with political disaster too. Nations totter and mountains totter. It's this whole imagery of though the structures fall and everything totters, we will not fear, because God is with us. He is our ever-present help. Though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea and the waters roar and foam, the mountains tremble at its swelling. Now, one thing the ancients did, although they were super wise and super brilliant and could make this amazing complex poetry, they didn't quite have the same picture of geography that we do. In fact, it's only been, 50 years, 60 years since we've had a photograph from space, about this globe. I'm just going to state it. It's a globe, spherical, Anyway, I know there's debate. But this is what the ancient Hebrew conception was. Let me just this is what they thought. And maybe you've read the Bible and you're like, that doesn't sound like the way I thought the earth was shaped. But here are some of the parts. So the ancient Israelites divided the world into heaven, so that's what's up there. They were not getting too complex about this, just so you know. It's heaven and earth is what's up there and what's down here. Okay? That's about it. They weren't thinking distant galaxies, and they were like, ooh, pretty lights on this structure, this domed structure on top. Isn't it amazing how those lights move? So there was earth and sea. Sea was around it, and then there was the underworld. Okay, and then the sky was a vault sitting on foundations, and that's how the foundations of the heaven were. So if you read the poetry in Job or the Psalms, you kind of get this sense that that's just, they were pretty plain visual, like this is what the world looks like, so this must be what it is, right? We don't fault them for it. They didn't have the Hubble telescope, but this is how we kind of translate some of their language that way. The Sheol is the pit, the death, and that you can only get there through death. And the foundations of the earth are somehow just down there in the great deep. And sometimes the water from the great deep comes up, and that's chaos. And sometimes it's fixed and put away, and that's order. And so God, our God, is the one who brings order. He is the one who shapes these things. Now, the next section says there's a river. So now we've got chaotic water swelling, roaring, and that's this chaotic stuff that God rules over. But in the city of God, there's a river. It's a lot calmer now, whose streams make glad the city of God. And the city of God is the holy habitation, the place where the Most High lives. El Elyon. That's a statement that goes beyond the covenant name that God gave to Israel. Israel, he said, I am who I am. Yahweh is where we see that, YHWH. And that's his covenant name with Israel. El Elyon is kind of this, but I'm not just the God of your nation. I am God overall. That's the Most High. Like, it doesn't matter what corner of the universe or corner of the snow globe you fit in, I rule all. So the Most High, El Elyon. God is in the midst of this holy habitation, the city, and she, the city, shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter, he utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us, the Lord of the God of the angel armies, the one who has control of all the spiritual warriors and can fight for us. That's a beautiful position to be in. The God of Israel, God of Jacob, is our fortress. Now think about this, because do you know in the history of Israel, there were times under the kings where they built a temple, and it was in the city of God, which was named, also it was called Zion or Jerusalem. So we got the city of God in Jerusalem, and then the temple of God in Jerusalem, and God's presence is in the temple in the city of God, which is Jerusalem. And that's his holy habitation. And there's a picture here of streams flowing from the temple, from this Eden, this garden imagery in the temple. There's pomegranates and lions and all sorts of stuff. Water flowing from the temple that's going out from the temple to heal and to bring life. And it's actually the vision of all the way at the end of your Bible, if you ever get into there, Revelation 21 and 22. And these streams flow out, and that picture was given to us by a prophet of old named Ezekiel. And he said, this is what it's going to be like. It'll be like back to the garden, back to Eden, where God's temple space is the beginning of springs of life and water flowing out, and the nations will be glad. And right now, the streams make the city of God glad. But as was talked about in our class this morning, I'll catch you guys up. God departed from the temple and gave his people over to ruin and exile. If you're trying to figure out where that was, Ezekiel chapter 10, you can write that down. But the presence of God is up and out. of the temple because they have been worshiping other gods. He's the God Most High, and they've been worshiping other gods, and so he would depart. And so he's gone. The city is demolished. The temple is in ruins. It's been ripped up. And the people of God still sing this song. Does that seem interesting? The city will not be moved. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. Oh, she's moved. She's tottered. She's shaken. The mountain of God is desolate. So it's interesting, and that's where I want you to know that the refuge is not just a place, it's a person. Because where the presence of the Lord is, there is protection. And it's not around a place if God's not in that place. So let's move to the next passage here. God, he's got a statement here for you. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. Well, what kind of desolations? He stops the wars. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He says, enough, 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 enough. Nations, enough. I am God Most High, enough. And then this verse, which you saw on your grandmother's mug sitting on her counter, she may have stitched it into a little quilt or something. You may have seen it on Instagram, and it doesn't mean what you think it means. Be still. Now that's what I like. Be stationary, inert. This is great. Don't do anything. Finally, I got my command. This is so much better than go and make disciples. This is like, be still. That's lovely. This is my life verse. Someone say that? Yeah, that's great. Be still and know that I'm God. Well, in context, what's he saying? Nations, enough. Like when your little brother or little sister wants to fight you, and this, I'm sure it happened to me, but it sure happened from me. The hand on the forehead of the little brother, swinging, just like, enough. No, be still and know that I'm the king of the mountain. Be still and know that I will be exalted. El Elyon, the God Most High above all the nations. Be still. So he's saying, stop fighting, nations. I will be exalted. Stop fighting. I will be king. And a message for us today is, for those of us that have our own ideas of establishing our own kingdoms of safety and refuge, and not run to him because that seems weak, and after all, we live in America, and we're not weak. We're not refugees. We don't need that. We're self-made, and stop fighting. I am the king. I am the king most high. I'm the God of the angel armies. Stop fighting. So minimally it means this. Don't stand in the way of the kingdom. And I'm not looking at you guys going, oh, look at all you standing in the way of the kingdom. It's like, the old preaching to the choir thing. Like, welcome to church. You're probably not standing in the way of the kingdom. I get that. But in some ways, the way you are like, no, my way. No, God. No. And you're swinging at him going, I want to do this my way. And I have my plans, and I have my ideas, and I was supposed to be at this point in my career by now, and I want in my way. And God says, be still and know that I am the Lord. I will be exalted. And his kingdom come means my kingdom go every day of the week. I've been crucified with Christ. I've been baptized. My life is over, and now it's his life through me. And so we can't all get off the hook on that one, right? Because sometimes we do stand in the way of his kingdom purposes, and we need that reminder. It also means that we've run to him, and we are safe, and we can let people know that you don't have to build your own kingdom and build your own walls to be safe. You come to the good king. Come to Jesus. Now, our lives have to show this in order for it to actually pay off. They've got to see you not striving and building your own kingdom and trying to make everything just right. They've got to see you trust that God knows what he's doing. He's on his throne, the city of God, the holy habitation. His streams are flowing. I can rest in his good gifts. But we have a story to tell. This message will not be silenced. I will be exalted above the nations, says the Lord. It's going to happen with or without you. But God says, with you. Yes, with you. The message is going to go out that God is exalted above the nations, that he is king, with or without you. But with you, please. Right? He's begging partnership. Come, be with me in this. And we've got to own this. This is what the apostles, the ones that were sent with this message the first time with Jesus' message, what can man do to me? Right? My grandma, Jean Grendel, she and her husband go over to work with the Maasai warriors. What's the worst thing that could happen? As you're telling people standing there with warriors with spears who are what's the worst thing that could happen? We're like, well, just kill them. Yeah, that's it. Isn't that amazing? That's it. That's the worst they can do. And God says, but I am your refuge. And we've got to toughen up, don't we? We've got to toughen up. We've got to know that we have a refuge. We've got to know that we are safe within his presence, and that there's nowhere safer than to be in his presence. And we've got to toughen up and say, you know what, the message has got to go out. God is to be exalted. He is the Most High. The most basic gospel message. If you can get it down to what is the gospel? Jesus is Lord. He is Lord. He's proven it through his death, burial, resurrection. He's given us these great gifts by forgiving us of our sin and giving us an inheritance. But right down to the basics of it is Jesus is Lord. He is Lord. In fact, that's my politic too. So you're a conservative, you're a Republican, you're a liberal, you're a Democrat. If I could just summarize my politics, is that there's a king. His name is Jesus. Jesus is Lord. And no, I can't side with that person where he doesn't side with Jesus. And no, I can't side with that person where she doesn't side with Jesus. No, I've got to find a new politic, and it's called the church. A new people politic, the people. And we're going to do things differently. And we don't put our trust in princes and in kings and in presidents and in senators. We trust in our Lord. And we believe that the life transformation actually happens right in that tank. It happens before anybody votes for anybody. It happens in a heart that's changed and says, you know what? Jesus is Lord. I'm going to live my life that way. And I don't care who says anything different. The worst you can do is kill me. Let's go. What can man do to me? The king is going to be exalted. And I want to be a part of that. And we invite you to sing with us on Sunday mornings. Some of them look like they're pleading with you. Come on, let's go, let's go. Exalt the name of God with me. Let's do the kind of work that defeats the enemy by just saying, you know what, I'm not going to believe all those other lies. I'm going to say Jesus is Lord. That's right, Jesus is Lord. You know what, when I step out of these doors, I'm going to let people know that my life is different because Jesus is Lord. And he's good, and he's a good and gracious king. And so there's a couple things that we as refugees need to do, and I want to give them to you. Actually, Jesus already did. I don't know why I'm stepping in. He said, this is the way you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. May your name be so reverenced and so set apart, and may it just be exalted and elevated and all the way to the top of the list. That's what we do in our praise too, right? We elevate his name. May his kingdom come, which means my kingdom go. May his will be done. And my will can go the way of baptism and death. And we've got to live that way. It's no mistake that Jesus said, pray this way. I challenge you. Pray this way. You can't pray this way and then go about your business the same way, can you? Because if you've just said, God, the way you've ordered things in the heavens, do that in my life and do that through my family and do that in my home and make that happen. Okay, now enough of you. Now I'm going to go about my business, about my kingdom, my name, my will. No, you can't do that. And he says stuff like, give us this day our daily bread. And you have to think, oh, our daily bread, our people, who do I need to share with to make sure that I'm living this out? Right? And forgive us our debts. Forgive us our trespasses. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those that we've sinned against. And, oh man, we're drawn back into community and back into that. Lead us not into the test, but deliver us from evil. I mean, this is the way to pray. It's really the way to live as well. So a kingdom prayer for refugees, absolutely. And then this kingdom presence. If he's the king, he's to be exalted. Jesus shows us who he is in that way. Then we've got to do what he says, seek first the kingdom. What are some of the other things that we seek after? That's a passage in Matthew chapter 6 if you want to cheat and go look there. But what are some of the other things that are cautioned against? Because when people don't seek first the kingdom, what are they looking for? Anybody know? Pop quiz. Why does Jesus have to say seek first the kingdom? Because what do we normally do? Yeah, seek ourselves, seek safety. What am I going to eat? What am I going to wear? How am I going to live? What's all this? How am I going to deal with my own stuff? And Jesus said, didn't you run to me for refuge? So let's seek first the kingdom. And that's a word. We've got to figure that out. We need to also become a person of refuge, not just a refugee, but a person of refuge. Many of you are exactly like this, so you can just point the finger now. But be the kind of person that people can come to when it hurts, when they're broken, when life is just destroyed. Let your own life be inconvenienced by others' inconvenient problems. Just open the door of refuge to people. Now that may be literal stuff. Like a few weeks ago, I asked on our Facebook group, said, hey, there are literal Afghani refugees coming to America. They're landing here. They're staying at a friend of mine's house, whose just their house is just, well, of course, this is where refugees start out. They come to our house. Right? Lauren and Karen Marston, the heroes you'll rarely hear about, but they've probably had 200 different people in their home, families. Sometimes like a family of 13 from the Congo are there at their house. I'm like, oh, well, that's who we are. We're people of refuge. But we were able to collect a bunch of goods and things to help a family from Afghanistan get settled. So you can become a person of refuge. There's lots of different ways that happens. Basically, it starts by opening your life to inconvenience. But your life is forfeit anyway, so don't worry about it. Just do it. Right? Offer your home as a kingdom outpost. God, if you want to do anything to advance your kingdom, let it be right here. Around me, in here, but also in this home. In fact, all these assets that I've got, if there's any way you can use this for the kingdom's purposes, then just do it. I'm seeking first the kingdom. I'm going to let you be the refuge, and I'm just going to let you do what you want to do. Can you imagine what would happen if a church full of people just said, you know what, our homes are for kingdom usage? And I know some stories. Looking right in the back there. We talked a couple weeks ago about how the neighbor kids who are living some broken, crazy, mixed up lives come to you guys for refuge, right? And it's very inconvenient. The kind of inconvenience that they, like, hey, look, we've got flowers. No, those are my flowers. You just cut my flowers. Those inconvenient, but that's what the kingdom wants to do. God wants to do that exact thing. And then also practice sharing the message. And this is a way to do those last two or last three together. Gather people in your homes and tell the story of how good God is. Over a meal. How about that? Gather together over a meal. That's not terribly inconvenient to eat a meal because most of you eat meals every day. This is a daily rhythm, right? So what if we could get a rhythm going where we ate meals together and celebrated how good God is and practice sharing these stories? We want to do that this fall. And there's no reason to not start now. Just invite some people over. Look around and say, hey, let's go have lunch. Hey, let's go do this. That's actually how churches grow. Did you know that? Most of you, when I've been to a couple memorials, of some wonderful people. We had a memorial for Dick Clay most recently, and some of the stories that came out is like, well, Dick and Lou, they always just invite you over to their house. You just come on over. So that's how I got plugged into this church. I just was invited over. Or Dave and Nancy, and it was like, oh, they just kind of include you in their lives. That's pretty amazing. That goes beyond just friendly, doesn't it? In fact, if you look at Jesus' life, Jesus wasn't friendly. He befriended people. And church, we are a friendly church, but that may kill us. We're a friendly church. You can come in the doors, you can meet people and greet people, and they'll say, hi, how you doing? Welcome here. The problem is you might get the exact same greeting the next week because they didn't remember who you were, because we don't really know each other necessarily. And some of you have noticed that some of the pillars of our church have kind of moved away, and those aren't the people that used to include me aren't there anymore. So, okay, so now you're the person that includes others. Let's go. Invite them into your life. Invite them for a meal. Do the normal things that friends do. We can't just be a friendly church. We've got to befriend people. Look at the life of the disciples. They said, okay, you're with us. Okay, you need to learn how to follow Jesus. Come on over to my house. Let's do life together. That's the step forward as we talk about making disciples that make disciples. So Refuge isn't a place, it's a person. We know it's in Jesus, absolutely. And he's the one saying, you want a refuge? Follow me. Like, wait, I wanted a refuge back here. No, he says, follow me. Like, well, there's not a lot of sitting, not a lot of stillness. He says, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach them to obey everything I've commanded you, and look, behold, lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the earth. So as you go, I'm there. My refuge keeps moving. Yeah, because he's on a mission. So you got to keep up with Jesus. We should be asking each other questions like, where has following Jesus taken you than this last week? He obviously means that you've gone somewhere, you've done something, you've brought someone into your life, or you've gone into somebody else's life. You've been about this idea of teaching people how good and gracious God is. That's the lifestyle of a refugee who wants to maintain that presence and peace and safety. So church, we need to be building new stories. Tonight at 11, local family sells goods and home to move into a poor neighborhood to open a refuge for those who are hurting. Local family joins foster care to absorb some of the hurt that's out there in the society and become a family that restores. Local family decides that they need to pack up their belongings and follow the mission. They've sold their boats and they've left their nets, and they need to get out there and be about the King's business. We've got a way that we can rewrite this, to be ourselves a refuge for the weary. And that's what Jesus is doing. And so here it is. If you want to experience Jesus, go do what he's doing. He's right there all along. The refuge is on the move. So let's keep up with Jesus. And there's going to be plenty of time for Sabbath. There's going to be plenty of time to rest and rest in his work. I'm not saying we've got to be frenetic about the pace and just keep go, 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 go. I'm saying we need to follow Jesus. And you alone know what that looks like in your life. It's worth a conversation around a table. Jesus, what does it look like to follow you? Because we want you to be with us and we want to be with you. You are